And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sunset Bob. I'm Bob in the close squeeze. So, what's shaking with you guys? How's the world treating you? How do you think life is? Is this the new normal? Are you ready for 9% increase in all expenses every month? Ready for war and total disabled um, geopolitics all around the world, worrying about, it's almost like, I remember in the 50s, when I went to fifth grade when I was seven, and the school was Hitler's Rifle Squad, HRS, Holy Redeemer School. And pretty much all the nuns were retreads from the death camps, the Nazi death camps. And my first grade teacher, Sister Holy Roller Skate, weighed about 7,000 pounds. And she was the golem of self-loathing in a penguin suit. And we were just down the street from the Empire State Building. I mean, maybe 10, 15 blocks from it, right? And we were on the west side, and the way our classroom, there's a big, gigantic window, and it was facing the Empire State Building. So, that whole window was full of the Empire State Building, right? And down below us was kind of a, blacktopped parking lot / playground, right? And that's where they let us, because they could pen us in, let us run around down there. Anyway, so this was in the 50s, and everyone was scared of the Russians. They had just detonated a hydrogen bomb. We had detonated a hydrogen bomb a year or so before they did, and basically a hydrogen bomb like the Bravo tests out there in the Pacific. We expected it to be maybe 1,000 times bigger than than the Hiroshima bomb, but it was 1 billion times bigger. So it basically irradiated the whole Pacific, right? So, and really raided Japan. We just bombed them like 10 years earlier, and here they are getting schmutzed by us again. Anyway, so everybody was kind of freaked out. So the Russians had to outdo us. So the Mike tests, the Bravo tests, Mike, Shrimp, were all tests that were in around the range of 11 to 15 megatons. And the Russian was 50 and above, because above 50 they couldn't measure how many megatons. And a megaton was like 1 million tons more than the Hiroshima, right? So we're getting into the billions of tons bigger than the Hiroshima, right? And so when the Russians blew up theirs, they did it just a few days after we did our last hydrogen bomb test out there in the Pacific, and we had no idea why the yields were so much bigger, right? And basically, what was occurring was the hydrogen bomb wasn't just a larger atomic bomb, because it took an atomic bomb to cause the compression of the deuterium, and they had it wrapped in lithium, which really upped it up. And say, oh, we didn't really think that the lithium, because the first one they tried, they had to cool it down, right, to absolute zero. So they had, the first hydrogen bomb was as big as a car plant, but the next one, that was made to be able to fit into a B-47 or a B-57 Hustler, right? That big kind of egg underneath the Hustler was the hydrogen bomb. So everybody was like, "Woo!" And so when the Russians blew up theirs up there in the north of their neck of the woods, again, it was way bigger than, but they knew why it was happening, and they did it on purpose, because they added a torsion field to the containment of the hydrogen envelope, right, of the deuterium, right, which basically made it a scalar weapon, right, and it when they detonated theirs just less than 48 hours after we did, it created an event in our solar system. It moved planets around and it affected the sun that the sun is still um, reveling in. And that's why our weather is a little strange, is because most of our weather comes from space. It doesn't really come from things on Earth, global warming or any of that kind of shit. Humans are like salt on a potato chip. We are kind of tasty, and yes, we have an effect, but an effect mostly is against ourselves. Now, it is true when we decimate whole eco areas. You know, like let's take the Brazilian rainforest. When I went down there in the '80s, the rainforest was still three-quarters there. Now it's only 10% there. I mean, there is what it is, right? The other 90% has been obliterated, right? To grow palm oil and have cows, and the biggest effect environmentally isn't all those trees missing; it's all those cows farting, right? So who knew, right? So anyway, um, so basically what I'm trying to describe here is that there's a micro and macro effect of the world by what we're doing. And the smaller micro effect has more effect than the macro effect, the big ones that we can see on TV, right? And so, and our weather comes from space, and all the water on the planet, that rains on us does not really come from, the ocean. It comes from deep there's more water inside our planet than on the outside. Go figure, right? And again, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Alba. Your sensei is your Briat, here to tell you a story. And, don't believe a word I say. This show is just for entertainment's sake. It has no reference to reality. Everything I say is, stand-up comedy, right? So relax, take it easy, have your morning coffee. So there I was, a little peanut of a guy that had grown up with my grandma, I had unconditional love from birth till 7 years old, when I got shipped back to my Freudenscheid feral family, and I was so small they missed me, which was great. They didn't even see me. I got to do whatever the heck I wanted. It's like, I remember my father. I was like walking around, and he tripped over me. He looked at me. Who are you? You don't belong here. You're not one of us. And he was right. I wasn't one of the morons that my family was. Not to say that they didn't have their good sides. They do. Everyone has a good side. Adolf Hitler had a good side. He loved children as long as they were barbecued correctly. And Jeffy the misogynist, who I don't even think died in that jail. I think they just got him out of there so he wouldn't go public. And it's interesting, his girlfriend, his cohort, she got 20 years. It'll be interesting to see what happens to her. So, because that whole, how did Jeffy, who was a middle-class guy, go into college and then become a billionaire like in, a year or two, right? Not because he was a go-to guy, right? Martin Young, well, how is things? Last time I watched, you were still a John. So that was a long time ago. That was, I mean, I kind of left the school 5 years ago. Now, I was back at the school. I went to visit him at the end of January and was up there, and we had this gigantic snowstorm that became the ice apocalypse. And, we were stuck up there for 3 weeks, couldn't go down. And he kept saying, "Oh, I can't take it, get up." Well, I couldn't. He tried to say, you could just drive down. And he went up and whee, boom, right on the ice. I guess you can. So, So John is, if the world could be as, you know, John is always, I've known him now close to 14 years, and he hasn't changed a bit. He has the same laundry list. Oh, the most important thing is my children, and I want to get back to them. Well, when he went across the country to California, did he go to Texas to see his kids? No. I said, "Hey, take me along. I'll be your navigator, negotiator." And he went right by in the neck of the woods where I'm at, like 15 miles away. And he, I kind of text him, say, "Hey, I see you're on the road. Come on down." And then he went off to California, and all he did was complain. So John has a sweetheart, and he's a good guy, and he's my friend, and I don't give up on friends. But, as my mom would say, you can drag a horse to water, can't make it drink, right? So John has to decide what he wants to do with his life. I mean, he's an amazing, he's a talented guy, well-educated, he's got his master's, he could go teach anywhere. But, I mean, he could teach from the school, right? Doesn't do it. He just keeps doing those, showing how many push-ups he does on his YouTube. And yet, 40, 50 people watch that, I try to give you some wisdom, and, there's one person here, Martin. And I'm glad you're here, buddy. And so, anyway, I was telling a story about when I went to first grade and was in the, 57-ish times, 1957. And I was in first grade Catholic school, HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad. The Pope at the time enabled 1 million Nazis, not just the average Waffen SS guy, but high-level Nazis, to vamoose, right, out of Europe, go down to South America, come to America. I think we had this thing called Operation Paperclip. Martin, you ever hear of Operation Paperclip? It's where we brought 70,000 Nazi administrators, scientists, engineers, real sick puppies. The CIA, the National Security Act was totally a Nazi takeover of our government. You ever hear of a thing called COG? Continuation of government. There's the guys who live down in DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and they rule us, right? They're not elected, They're, what I like to call the hidden hand. And no one, all my scholastic, oh, that's ridiculous. Oh, that happened. It's right there in front of us. Just go look at the National Security Act. Go look at MJ-12. Go look at, Forrestal. He was the first Secretary of Defense. And when Jack got whacked, not killed, but run over by a Japanese destroyer, this little PT boat, because Jack was in the way back of the war. He wasn't fighting the war. Well, Richard Nixon was. It's quite interesting. And Nixon was a war hero. Jack was that right around his PT boat like it was his private yacht, going to different islands where the nurses were getting laid, right? And then he gets run over by a PT boat, and he was already a sickly guy. He was the runt of the litter, and so, but he was smart guy. When you're the runt of litter like me, you kind of hold back and you watch what everyone's doing. Like Joe Kennedy, the first son, he was big and strong, the football player, handsome, poster boy of the Kennedy family. Then he was basically killed in a. He wanted to be a hero, so he took off in a B-24 full of dynamite, and before he could jump out, it was like radio-controlled bomb. Before he could jump out, the thing blew up. So they took him out. So when so Jack got run over by a Japanese destroyer. He was running without lights, heading for the girls, and the Jap destroyer was running without lights, trying not to get blown up, and ran over PT-109. Not because they wanted to run him over; they didn't even see him, right? And so, he ended up in the hospital, ended up back in the States. He was, basically crippled, and but they made him a commander, right? So that's like being a colonel in the army. So He basically, you know, so he was still in the military. So Forrestal knew him, and Jack knew languages. He was smart. He went to Harvard. All the rest, and very political family. So Forrestal took him on, and they went to Europe just as the war was ending. Where Forrestal made all the deals with the Nazis to bring in Operation Paperclip, right? And Forrestal was a pretty righteous guy, and he thought, we should, because the Germans were saying, hey, you think we're bad, the Russians are going to eat your lunch. You gave them all this stuff to fight us, and you shouldn't have. So, he was thinking about that, but the Germans were just, manipulating. And, the brothers, who, one guy started the CIA and the other guy was Secretary of State in the airport in D.C. is named after him. Anyway, things were going down, and the UFO thing was, they had been seeing, strange things in the United States, since the founding fathers. So, and as the war, just as the war broke out, like days after Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, there was a flap over L.A. This big, gigantic ship that was just kind of, going at 5 miles an hour when, and everyone thought it was the Japanese. So, they lit it up with searchlights and, shot thousands of shells at it. And they have, photographs and films of, the things just and it just kind of meandered around across the coast along LA up to San Francisco. And they shot the heck out of it. And more damage was done by the falling shells because the shells would hit it and there was like a force field around it. It would bounce off and fall down into someone's neighborhood and blow them up. So they had about 800 explosions along that path of their own shells bouncing off and not blowing up. Some blew up when it hit that field, but millions of people watched this and it happened twice, right? And so they knew about this, and they had other, the craft that went down in Roswell was not the first one. They had retrieved other stuff, right? So they had an idea of what it was, and they had Nikola Tesla telling them about all this stuff because he was talking to those guys and other people in the military-industrial complex also. Along, that's how the Germans had such a big jump on us technologically because they had this thing called the Vril Society and the Thule Society that were esoteric entities that very much like Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society and a number of others that were in communication with these guys. Dimensional, see, it's not just guys from other planets, little green men. No, it's like lots of different things, And if you ever watched J.J. Abrams, I guess is his name, he had a really great show called Fringe. And that showed, there was a mirrored universe like ours with all this in it, and that was very interesting. Abrams was like the next generation of Steven Spielberg, right? And so those guys, along with George Lucas, were given the task to tell the human race what's going on through movies. So when the stuff gets unfurled, people won't be in shock. Right? So, and I've been saying, the guys are going to be landing on the front lawn of the UN any day now, right? Well, they already have. They've come there many, 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 many times. When I was there were guys who were, there was this guy named Dirk George. He was like 8 feet tall, really handsome. Girls, he had, talk about animal magnetism. But I diverge from my story of Sister Holy Roller Skate. So she was a straight up Nazi. She was at Auschwitz, and she would torture men by squeezing their breasts until milk came out. So she was called the milkmaid of Auschwitz, and she would kill them by pain by squeezing their breasts and their nipples so hard that milk would come out. So, and that's where I got the idea of world peace, men have mammary glands just like women. We just don't have the hormones. But if we just injected ourselves, we could breastfeed our children. So if we breastfed our children, men would have less of an urge to send them off to die in war. So the thing that's going to really bite Putin in the ass is he's lost 60,000 guys, easily. Maybe 40,000, but thousands of kids, Russian kids, have been just thrown in the meat grinder. And that's how they have progressed, because they're not. All they do is have superior force and superior numbers, and just they're chewing up the Donbass. There's nothing left for them to administer. No one wants to stay there. Oh, we're going to give you a Russian passport for what? Burning rubble. Toxic waste. So, but there are a lot of mommies who their boys aren't coming home, and yes, they made sure that they took all those kids from not the large cities, but from little towns all over Russia. Russia's a big joint, right? But this war's going to go on and on and on, because Vlad is reading a script from the Hidden Hand for the unipolar power structure, right? And that's what that's what this is all about. We are being administered into a new world order. George Bush, talked about it in the 90s, right? And we've been heading there. And 2012 was, the Hidden Hand's big problem, because energetically, the planet changed from being the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. We had been moving, since the 50s or 60s, when it's the age of Aquarius, we were heading into it. That's what the 60s and 70s were about. But we were still in the Piscean age, getting what you want through violence, right? Well, the inertia of that is so strong that even after 2012, and that's when the demarcation, right? And Whitley Strieber wrote a great book called 2012. Go read that book. And it's exactly what's happening. The beginning of the book, it starts out with guys on the TV going, "Oh, it's 2012. It's actually it was 1999 or no, 2011, and they were heading towards 2012. And they would count down, and everyone said, "Oh, it's going to be the end of the world," but it wasn't. It's just the end of the Piscean age. But that violence and hedonism and basic mercantile mechanism was so strong that it had an inertia, right? And we weren't put on this earth to become, merchants of death. We're people think we are this body. No, this is just an avatar. This ain't me, right? This is just this bag of water and a few elements, and I am basically. Consciousness isn't even my soul isn't my consciousness. My soul is like a server. It brings the information from this avatar's experience into my Akashic records, which gives access through the 9 doors into my sanctuary of my own choosing. Now, that sanctuary is the place where my spirit co-creates with love. And it too is a virtual reality, meaning because it's being fed by this server, or my soul, with this information from my avatar, it's giving me the ability to work with love as a work in progress. Meaning, there is no finish line to this. There is no, the Christian right is pushing us towards, Armageddon, so they can be the 700,000 that go to heaven. No, heaven is not. Heaven doesn't exist, but heaven's right here on earth. And if you own, so I live on $400. I mean, with inflation, before inflation, like before 2019, my $400, I was living large, right? Because I don't buy anything, I don't get anything, I don't do anything except read, write, and talk to people and talk to you, and. Gas was $1.45, and can you imagine that, $1.45 gas? Woo. So, and that was the end of 1919, before the COVID, and I saw COVID coming because I had a friend of mine, one of my affairs to remember, and she's an amazing woman. And I met her in a supermarket in Johnson City, and she was just wearing these super duper teeny hot pants, jogging shorts, and a tube top. And she had the same coat I did, but hers was black and mine was pink. And I was in one of the crippled buggy wagons to shopping, and she was in front of me, and she had a butt like you just couldn't believe. And she had 3 bottles of maple syrup on one finger, and she had a big watermelon on the other, right? And she had a Angela Davis afro, just way out here, right? And every time she moved her head, her afro would move. And I was just in awe of this. And I was leaving, she was in front of me, and she stopped, and I almost ran into her. And I was like that far from running into her. She turned around and looked at me, and she just cracked a smile. And I looked up at her, and I said, "Oh, I guess maple syrup isn't just for pancakes anymore." And she burst out laughing hysterically, right? And I said, "Well, that might be worth a little chuckle, but that's not that funny." And she goes, "No, it's you. You're hysterical. I mean, look at you. You look like a crackhead Santa Claus." And she goes, "You're wearing the same jacket I am wearing. And I just bought it at Walmart's for like $1.50. When I saw it go on sale earlier in the winter, it was like $30. I could afford that. So I waited, and that's the thing about Walmart. So if you wait long enough, that stuff comes way, like this shirt. They were selling it for $20. Bought it for $1.25 a couple of years ago. So anyway, she's going, you were in that Walmart, weren't you? And there was, when I bought this black one, there was just the black one and the pink one. And she said that was so pink I couldn't wear it. And I almost didn't buy it because this one was so black that, because I'm so black, it's like I put a black hole on. And she was blacker than night. I mean, blacker. And she was beautiful. She had a beautiful face, beautiful body, but she was this black, like superhero. And she was a superhero. And so, we just kind of hit it off. And we rolled out in the parking lot. We talked for about an hour, and it was the middle of winter. And as long as the sun hit us, we were fine. And she was in these little shorts and just a tube top and this coat, right? And I was in my pink coat sitting. Anyway, so we rolled over to my car, and she looked at me, "Well, you are a homeless guy." I said, "Well, no, this is like my storage bin." And I dug around it, and I took out a paper about social responsibility. And she read it and said, "Wow, this is," and she goes, "I'm an endocrinologist, I'm a virologist, I'm a scientist, but this is like scholarly work." I said, "Yeah, that's what I am. I'm an itinerant scholar." Anyway, we talked tomorrow. We got in my car. I threw the stuff in the side, the passenger seat in the back. I just threw it back there. She got in. She goes, "I really like you. I met anybody like you." And she was about 32. And so anyway, I said, "So what are you doing here?" She goes, "Well, I'm doing some research." And she looks around. We're in the car. It looks like no one listening. She goes, "I'm in the military." I said, "Oh, well, that's a great uniform you're wearing." She kind of chuckled, and she goes, No. I'm like you. I'm an itinerant scholar. I'm in the science world." And I said, "Well, I used to be there too, but I like the social science a little more interesting, history, anthropology." And she goes, "Yeah, I know. My grandfather was an anthropologist." So anyway, she came from this long line of black scholars that worked for the government. And right there between the 1890s and 1920, there were a lot of black people in the government, in administration. So that's why DC is Chocolate City. And that's where she kind of came from, part of Maryland. And so anyway, she, basically worked on, things that I can't talk about. And so we're in my car, and the sun's going down. I go, "Listen, so how long have you been here?" She goes, "Oh, about 3 months." I said, "So what have you been doing? Any fun? I mean, Johnson City can be a fun town." She goes, No, I've just been doing research, just 24/7, working away." I said, "So, you're done with your project?" She goes, "Well, I got all my ducks in a row." I said, "So you got any time? Like here it is Friday. What are you doing this weekend?" She goes, "I've been taking a day off for 3 months. Because I don't have to work. Like I said, I got my ducks in a row." I said, "Fine." Why don't you come home with me? I'll cook you dinner. Let's go back to the Kroger's and buy. And this is, we bought a big salmon for $7. Now it's 35. Right? No buying salmon for Sensei Al Bob. So, we went in there, bought that. And here I'm this old guy, and she has a car. So she goes, I'm living over at school in these little apartments in the back there by the radio station. I'm gonna stick the watermelon and the maple syrup in your car and the other stuff we just bought. And why don't you? I'm gonna run over there. I'm gonna drive it. She goes, no, I'm gonna run. So she runs. I drive. She gets her car. She gets some stuff, throws in the bag, throws in the car, and she follows me, 50 miles to the deep green and pulls in there. And she goes, this is amazing. This is like heaven. I said, yeah, that's why I live here. And so, she goes down to my man cave and he just kind of pokes her head. He goes, it's like you're a bear. It's like, I can't believe it. I said, that's what happens when men are by themselves. She just chuckles. I said, so it doesn't, disgust you? She says, no. I was in Sarajevo during the war, and then she just ticked all these places off that we've had wars in that most Americans don't know that we've had wars in. And she was in, because she's a medical doctor too. So she went to Ranger School. I mean, they sent her basically to MIT and, really super duper prestigious science schools. But she went and did the full Monty of being a soldier. She graduated Ranger School. And I told her about my partner that when I was at the, New York City Housing Authority, and that she was the first woman to. And she goes, "Oh, I know. There's a picture of her, in the Ranger School." And she's like looked at as a goddess. I said, "Yeah, that was my partner." So anyway, as soon as I said that, she was like, and I showed her pictures of her. My God, look at you! You're there. She's so hot. So she, basically stayed there for a few days, and so that was Friday. Cook her a really nice meal, and it's like snowing, and my kitchen is up above the man cave, so you gotta walk. And the way I laid it out is like no matter how much snow or rain, there is this path that is always dry. That takes me up from one place to the other. I have 3 different places in the deep green. And that's what gives me exercise. I go up and down these hills all day long. Right? That's why my legs still work. Anyway, so first night, she crawls into bed with me, snuggles up, and we just have the sweetest little time. And she goes, "You are the best. You just make me feel so good, and you don't want anything." And it's this is great. It's like having a girlfriend with a penis. It's like I like this. Anyway, so that was Friday night. Saturday night, we made some more stuff and then made a snowman and did some other fun stuff. And then, Sunday, and she still didn't have to go back. She had everything in Russia. I'm going to stay a week here. I like this. And not having to drive anywhere, not having to do anything. You got all this food stored away, and you're an amazing cook. You take the crappiest stuff and turn it into amazing stuff. And I said, yeah, it's grandma cooking. You take what you had last night, you cook it again with something else, and you just keep doing it, right? So she goes, yeah, that's what my grandma did, right? So, and we were, I was, I'm an African American, and that's what she's, when I said I'm an African American that's, melanin challenged, she just giggled, and so anyway, and so Sunday night, Monday morning, boom, 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 boom on the door, right? And I don't want to, I'm not a morning guy. So she just had these, little teeny girl underpants on and her tube top and her afro sticking way up. And, I said, go see who that is. And so she gets up. I'm not getting up. She goes, aren't you going to see who that is? They're pretty insistent. I said, you're interested, go. So she did. She got up. He went to the door. It was my neighbor. And he's kind of a Ku Klux Klan guy. And he saw this, ebony goddess, Angela Davis hair And he fell down. I heard a crash. And she goes, come here. So I threw on a robe. I went up and looked. There's my neighbor. And she went off in her car, and she's a doctor, so she had a little black bag. And she said, this guy's having a heart attack. So she had the EpiPen. She had everything she needed. Got him straight in the heart. Gave him a shot, gave him a few other things. Got him stabilized, and he kind of came back. And she had caught it right, so he didn't have the heart attack. He didn't have the damage. He didn't all the above. And he goes, oh, and he goes, you're an angel. Am I dead? Is this because I've been such a bad person? And she goes, no, but you just had a heart attack, and I saved your life. I'm a doctor. And he goes, I just called my girlfriend, and she's worse racist than I am. I'm in love with you, and my whole worldview of black people has totally changed just by this experience. But I'm going to a hospital. I was going to go anyway to get it bypassed, and I had this, and I called her, and she's on her way. And she finds you here looking like that. Oh man! And I said, no problem. She'll go into the man cave. I'll be here with you. Anyway, so she stays with him, blood pressure cuff, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as we hear the car, a mile away, she goes in. But she and him, he was in the military. They, bonded on being Rangers. So I really love you. Anyway, before the lady shows up, the girlfriend shows up for him, he goes, listen, can you go stay in my house and take care of my animals? I'll probably be in the hospital for a month. I said, sure, because he has a really nice house, heat, jacuzzi, fireplace, satellite, TV, internet, you name it. So the girl comes, we bundle them up, put them in her car, they drive away, we go up to the house, and it's a really nice house. It's where the Floridians live now. And he had big dogs, like pit bull / Great Dane / something else. And they were, wouldn't want to eat anybody. They just loved her. They liked me. They knew me. And he knew that, so he knew I could take care of them. And because otherwise, these dogs would eat anybody. They were always, so we went, and she is just lovely. She now has the internet. She can do all her work without having to go back to 50 miles to Johnson City. And she spends a month there, right? And he's got a freezer full of steaks and you name it. And, so I'm cooking away, and we're cooking away, and we have the best of times. And this was right around 2000, Christmas time, 2019, right? And so she gets a message that's like, not coded, but saying in a certain open message, but saying certain things. She goes, something's a brew, and because she's being brought back to Fort Detrick, which is not her thing, but it is the main thing for biological warfare. And so she goes, something's up. And so she goes, I'm going to have to leave in a couple of days, right? So we'll have 2 more nice days. I'll drive back to ETSU and pack everything up and finish everything there, and then I'll take off. And so she does. And I don't hear from her for a week or so, and she contacts me on my email, and she's in Hawaii. And I don't know why she's in Hawaii, and she just talks about, oh, the weather's nice, I've been surfing, blah, blah. So I met some friends because she had spent her high school years, her parents were in the military, and they were stationed there when she was in high school, and that's when she was picked to be what she is now. A very similar experience that I had with Cardinal Cushing. I got grabbed when I was, an infant, and being, mentored in a direction. Right? And so she had the same experience. So she and I had many, many similarities, right? And I grew up in Harlem, and I was breastfed by a big black-breasted black woman, so that's why I could dance. We used to dance. We used to dance in the snow naked. She loved that. And so, there's a guy in his 70s with a really hot, brilliant woman that could, break me in half 20 different ways, murder me with any, thing in the house, and we just had the best of times. She said, I feel so relaxed around you. I feel like this is the best relationship I've ever friggin' had, ever. Because I'm just living it moment to moment. I'm not thinking about anything, except how much fun we're having and how much love we have, and that you're so smart and I'm so smart. I can tell you anything, and you'll never repeat it because you'll probably forget it. So, I was the perfect boyfriend for her, and that was, a month and a half before COVID really took off, and she was like, saying something. She didn't say what it was or how it was because no one was. She just, by the stuff she was getting through her server at ETSU, and she had it wired up so it looked like she was in ETSU, but with electronics, there was no hiding anything. So anyway, the powers that be knew that she and I were together for a month at least, and so that's when I pieced it together myself, that this was coming. And I told you about it, what's going on about, the big splat. And when she was with me and I was with her and she was, up there in the deep, I didn't really talk about it. But 2 years later, I could talk about it, right? Because she has disappeared more or less. She is doing something. And the last time I heard from her was last fall. And again, she was coming from a place, where she was just talking about, very mundane things, right? We never talked about anything unless it was her and I alone, naked, out in a snowdrift, So that is one side of your sensei love. The other side was going back to Sister Holy Rolleskate, the milkmaid of Pain at Auschwitz, who was my first grade teacher. She, made us, we had these drills where we got under our desk and say the rosary, right? And we were like, 10 blocks from the Empire State Building, which would be ground zero for, them dropping their big hydrogen bomb on New York, which would obliterate, all of New York, all of Long Island, pretty much everything to Philly and up to Albany, would have just one big hole, right? So, and lift all that dirt up into the troposphere and push it all over the world and irradiate everybody because it was a very dirty bomb. Not just powerful, but very dirty. Anyway, when I was 6, about a year and a half after, from that point, my dad took me out to see a ground blast of a tactical nuclear weapon out in, Nevada test range. And, so I knew what a nuclear weapon was. I saw it firsthand. When you are holding your hand in front of your face and you're wearing, welder's goggles and you can see the bones in your hand, this is something not like a firecracker. And that was a tactical weapon, right? So anyway, and the flash was so bright it etched our shadow on the concrete wall. So before, they counting it down, everyone turn away from the blast, and we were all facing this concrete wall. And it was middle of the night, no moon, darker than dark, no lights, bang, brighter than I've ever seen. It still affects my eyes. And we weren't facing it, and it etched our shadow. Those were about 20 guys standing up there. My dad had a lead blanket over me, and I was covered in goo and wearing welder's goggles. And when the blast hit, my dad grabbed my shoulder because I was about to take off across the parking lot, So I had a full idea of what a nuclear weapon could do. So I wasn't going to get under the desk and duck and cover because, no. And because you could see the Empire State Building out this window, right? And I said, get on your knees and do the rosary. He goes, well, I love the rosary. I say it like 5-10 times a day. I don't need to say it out loud. I'm constantly saying it to myself. I have a personal relationship with it. Oh, that's blasphemy. You have to go through me to get to God. And I said, hey, good luck with that. And she just lost her. I said, listen, see, that's the Empire State Building. They're going to drive a hydrogen bomb on that, and we will be atoms in nanoseconds. We won't even see the light. We will be incinerated. and then we will be, this big glass window will come and turn us into bacon. And I just went down the things that we would be within the first second. And why get under the desk and say the rosaries when I could just sit there in my chair and talk to God and say the rosary? She grabbed me by the throat, put me up against the wall, and boom! And she had this big cinder block of a fist, and she grabbed me this way and hit me on the left and broke my orbit, turned me deaf in this ear, and broke my jaw. Right? And with the first punch, she knocked me out. I didn't wake up until 3 days later in the hospital, and my head was in a cast. My jaw was wired, and I couldn't, like my eyes were all bandaged. I couldn't, and I could hear out of this ear. And these nuns were going, well, his head is inflamed, but when the swelling goes down, he's going to have a lobotomy. I knew what a lobotomy was, and I'd rather have a bottle in front of me. And so I was like, and I couldn't move, I couldn't see, I couldn't hear out of this ear, I couldn't open my jaw, and I really had to piss. And I was already wet, meaning they hadn't changed me or done anything, just let me piss in the bed. And all of a sudden, I was in the air, and my guardian angel, my doctor, Dr. Black, who saved my life when I was born, and if you want to read these stories, get a hold of me at dudewake42@gmail, dudewake42@gmail. And, let's start a communication. And people have gotten a hold of me there and wanted me to go to some other site and log in and sign up and subscribe and give blood. And no, if you can't talk to me over my email, I'm not going to talk to you. If you want, I don't think you guys, if I've been doing this now 4 years. I got about 2,000 shows up. If you haven't realized already that I'm a cheeky monkey, I'm not going to do anything anyone tells me to do. Sorry, And so if you really want to talk to me, you're going to have to talk to me straight up on my email. And that's if you think that by going to some, point-to-point server that will be not listened to, you're a moron, because everything on the internet is observed. That's what it was given to us for, to give us, so we live in a surveillance state. The reason we got these things, this is a miniaturization of the keyhole spy cell. And, that's, we're being surveilled. Sorry, that's what it is. And get ready for the, we have social, no, we don't have social, we have a credit score. Canada, they have a social score. We're going in that direction. Right? So good luck. I'm glad I'm in my 70s. People can't believe I'm as old as I am. You look so good. Right? Well, I died so many times that, hey, it's like squeezing a lemon. I've been turned into lemonade. Anyway, the thing that saved my bacon was they were doing this drill of duck and cover, and they had people from the head office of the church, and this one guy who was, high in the order, basically knew me through my godfather, Cardinal Cushing. So just as I was being beaten to death by this Nazi, the milkmaid of terror from Auschwitz, was brought there by the Pope's rat line, a garbage truck backed into this big gigantic window. Right? And it smashed, made a god-awful noise, and all the glass was all over the place, and that stopped her from beating me. And then the people came in, and my head was a bloody pulp, and there was blood all over her fist and all over her, her penguin suit. The big white collar was covered in blood, and blood was all over her face, and she was like, she had her hand around, she had crushed my larynx, right? I talk in a different way because my larynx is not what most people's larynx is. She crushed it, right? I didn't talk for 3 years, right? Which was good. I learned how to listen. Anyway, so that is me. That in the movie Forrest Gump, and that little, feather flies around. Well, that's me. I'm not Forrest Gump. I am the feather in the movie, right? I'm always being blown from here to there to be in the right place at the right time, right? So it would be really nice if somebody sent something for the old PayPal. We're right now at 50 minutes and 50 seconds, and I'm going to zip out of here at 50:50. So I'll be back in about an hour for my next spot. Right? I have to go run some errands, and then I'm going to go have another meal. This is my meal day, and and I have a little cash. Both these places only take cash. So I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed this little story. I will continue it when I come back. Okay, and so. Maybe we'll have some phone calls and see who's around to have phone calls. Okay? Okay. Bye. Do, 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 do.